Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Friday, March 1st. March 1st. Maria, can you believe we're 3 months into the year? Maria, can you believe we're into the third month of the year already? Wow. It is Friday, March 1st, 2024. Hey, Peter. It's time for Bible Reading Fellowship. Had some technical difficulties getting logged in, so had to back out and start over. But here we are. We're going to pick up our reading this morning. Hi, Maria. We're going to pick up our reading this morning in 2 Chronicles 28. 2 Chronicles 28, reading out of the Legacy Standard Bible. If you do not have your own copy of that translation, you can open up a second tab on your computer. And in the search bar, type read, read.lsbible.org, read.lsbible.org. When that page opens up, type 2 Chronicles 28 in the search window, hit enter. That'll bring up the text. Follow along as we read. When we get to the end of the chapter or the bottom of the page there, just click on the right arrow. That'll move you over to chapter 29. Big John, good morning, sir. So we did log in late. Hey, Kathy, good morning. Did log in late because of the technical difficulties. So we're going to try to get right to it here in just a minute or two. For the sake of time, I'm thinking about writing something. Today, I'm trying to decide how I'm going to break up my time today. But I'm not sure. Not sure what to write about. That's one of the hardest things about writing is deciding what to write. So, but we'll give a couple more minutes for folks to log in. Joe was in the first feed that I had to shut down. Hopefully Joe will be back. And there he is. I had Roxy down here, but then I started running into glitches, and so I had to put her down, and meaning set her to the ground, not put her down, but set her to the ground, and she took off. So, going to be about 48 degrees today, same as yesterday. Got out twice yesterday. Got out for a little bit in the morning, and then again later in the afternoon, right before dinner. Just a couple of short stints out on the street. Sarah, good morning. Uh, I was packing up. I was praying, asking God, because I only had a little bit of time. Only had about an hour and a half or so, a couple hours um, yesterday afternoon. And Lord, let someone come by, get a tract or a Bible or something. And so someone did get a tract, and a couple of ladies pulled up to the light, held up traffic while I grabbed a Bible out of the box for them for her little girl in the back seat. So was able to do that, and and so I pray again, and as I shared in the Facebook post yesterday, what a doofus. I'm all, Lord, you have time. Lord, there's still time. You still have time. And why that's so silly is, well, God created time. God stands outside of time, came into time and space in the person of Jesus Christ. But, you know, God, you have time. Like he could be late or run out of time. It was just silly. But I asked that, that I'd be able to, put the gospel in the hand of at least one more person or communicate the gospel with someone. And, when I did that, um, um, I had about a half hour left before I had to head home for dinner. And as I'm packing up, I'm watching a man walk across the street towards me, and he's kind of eyeballing me. Um, and um, and I'm putting stuff in the back of my car. And where I was parked, I was at Marquette and Kimberly, just a half mile from my home. And the parking lot, there's a Popeyes restaurant right there on the corner. So I parked there, and it sits up on a hill, and you walk down this little hill to get down to the street, down to the sidewalk. So I'm putting stuff in the back of my car, and I'm looking down, and I can see him walking over, and he's starting to walk towards me. He's not walking in the crosswalk anymore. He's starting to walk towards my car. And so I said, well, hello. He's all, hey, I'm trying. I hope I can get down to Walmart in time for the open interviews at 5 o'clock. Looking at my watch, it's like 5, 7 till. Oh yeah, well. Yeah, I really hope I can get there. And it was his way of basically asking for a ride. So I usually don't do that. It's just the cop in me. I usually don't put strangers in my car. Um, just cause you never know what's going to happen. But I thought, no, you know what? I'm gonna, and I don't even know if the guy was actually going for an interview or he just needed to get to Walmart to buy something. I don't know. Um, but anyways, the Walmart was just a couple miles down the road, down the same street there, Kimberly, and so I said, hop in, I'll give you a ride. And so now I'm thinking, well, I want to make sure to get him there on time because he just got a few minutes. But I also want to have time to share the gospel with him. So I'm kind of weighing that, monitoring my speed, and I'm able to, determine that he believes himself to be a Christian and he's going to heaven because of all the good he's done. And so I'm able to quickly communicate the gospel to him and put a tract in his hand as he's hopping out of the car to go in for his interview. So his name was Lee. You could be praying for Lee. So that was the gospel conversation for yesterday. Maria, I'm glad you enjoyed those audios. Praise God. Joe, not to be funny or anything, but any gospel tract with a good gospel presentation is a gospel tract I'll use most of the time these days, since most of my evangelism is done here in my community. I use tracts that are written by our church with all of our church information on it, and it's a longer trifold tract, probably about 1,500 word tract, which is about 5 business card gospel tracts or whatever. But really, any gospel tract. I try to avoid these days bait and switch kind of tracks. I try to avoid things. Yeah, 1,000,000 tracks is good. 1,000,000tracks.com is where I've written a bunch of gospel tracks. Um, I try not to get too gimmicky these days with my tracks. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just a personal preference. That's all. That's all. Living Waters, certainly. Lots of good tracks there at Living Waters, livingwaters.com, 1,000,000tracks.com. I've a bunch of tracks that I've written. You can just search tracks by Tony. But there are a lot of good tracks on that site. Um, oh, Chapel Library. Chapel Library. Older tracks written by dead guys. Spurgeon and Ryle and people like that, and their tracks are free. You can make donations, but you can get tracks for free from Chapel Library. They're out of Pensacola, Florida, I believe. So those are some places, or write your own. So long as it's a solid law and gospel presentation, write your own gospel tract if you want to. So, all right, let's get started. Want to get to some reading here. Of course, we will begin with a word of prayer, move to Spurgeon's morning devotion for March 1st, and then we will head to 1 Chronicles chapter 28. Let's begin our time in a word of prayer. Father in heaven, thank you for this day, Father. Thank you for the rest you gave us during the night. Thank you for allowing us to wake on either side of heaven this morning, opening our eyes to still be here in this world, or Father, it would, of course, it would be better had we opened our eyes and found ourselves in your presence. But we are thankful for the night, thankful for the morning, Father, thankful for the day that you have in front of us. This is the day that you've made, Lord. Let us rejoice and be glad in it throughout the day. Father, thank you. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to gather together again this morning to open your word together and to read. Father, I pray that you would use the reading of your word this morning to bring yourself glory. And Father, that we would fulfill the answer to the first question in most catechisms: what is the chief end of man? To glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Father, may we glorify you and enjoy you in our reading this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right. Spurgeon's morning devotion for March 1st is from Song of Solomon 4:16, which reads, "Awake, O north wind, and come, thou south, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out." And again, I mention this from time to time, but Spurgeon can take any verse of the Bible and make a devotion out of it. It's amazing. Spurgeon writes, anything is better than the dead calm of indifference. Our souls may wisely desire the north wind of trouble if that alone can be sanctified to the drawing forth of the perfume of our graces. So long as it cannot be said, the Lord was not in the wind, we will not shrink from the most wintry blast that ever blew upon plants of grace. Did not the spouse of this verse humbly submit herself to the reproofs of her beloved, only entreating him to send forth his grace in some form, and making no stipulation as to the peculiar manner in which it should come? Did she not, like ourselves, become so utterly weary of deadness and unholy calm that she sighed for any visitation which would brace her to action? Yet she desires the warm south wind of comfort too, the smiles of divine love, the joy of the Redeemer's presence. These are often mightily effectual to arouse our sluggish life. She desires either one or the other or both, so that she may be able to delight her beloved with the spices of her garden. She cannot endure to be unprofitable, nor can we. How cheering a thought that Jesus can find comfort in our poor, feeble graces can it be? It seems far too good to be true. Well, may we court trial or even death itself, if we shall thereby be aided to make glad Emmanuel's heart. Oh, that our heart were crushed to atoms, if only by such bruising our sweet Lord Jesus could be glorified. Graces unexercised are as sweet perfumes, slumbering in the cups of the flowers. The wisdom of the great husbandman overrules diverse and opposite causes to produce the one desired result, and makes both affliction and consolation draw forth the grateful odors of faith, love, patience, hope, resignation, joy, and the other fair flowers of the garden. May we know by sweet experience what this means. Amen. All right, turning our attention now to Second Chronicles 28. Good morning, Chris. Reading out of the Legacy Standard Bible, the LSB. God's word tells us this. Ahaz was 28 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and he did not do what was right in the sight of Yahweh, as David his father had done. But he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. He also made molten images for the Baals. Moreover, he offered offerings in smoke in the valley of Ben-Hinnom, and burned his sons in the fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom Yahweh had dispossessed from before the sons of Israel. Again, the valley of Ben-Hinnom would be known in Jesus' day as Gehenna. He also sacrificed and offered offerings in smoke on the high places and on the hills and under every green tree. So Yahweh his God gave him into the hand of the king of Aram, and they struck him and carried away from him a great number of captives and brought them to Damascus. And he was also given in the hand of the king of Israel, who struck him with a great slaughter. Indeed, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, killed in Judah 120,000 in one day, all men of valor, because they had forsaken Yahweh, the God of their fathers. And Zikri, a mighty man of Ephraim, killed Maaseiah, the king's son, and Azrikam, the ruler of the house of Elkanah, the second to the king. Then the sons of Israel carried away captive of their brothers 200,000 women, sons and daughters, and they plundered also a great deal of spoil from them, and brought the spoil to Samaria. But a prophet of Yahweh was there, whose name was Oded, and he went out before the army which came to Samaria, and said to them, Behold, because of the wrath of Yahweh, the God of your fathers, against Judah, he has given them into your hand, and you have killed them in rage, which has even reached heaven. So now you are intending to subdue for yourselves the people of Judah and Jerusalem for male and female slaves. Surely do you not have your own matters of guilt against Yahweh your God? So now listen to me and return the captives whom you carried away from your brothers, for the burning anger of Yahweh is against you. And then some of the heads of the sons of Ephraim, Azariah the son of Johanan, Berechiah the son of Meshillemoth, Jehizkiah, the son of Shallum, and Amasa, the son of Hadlai, arose against those who were coming from the engagement of the army, and said to them, You must not bring the captives in here, for you are intending to bring upon us guilt against Yahweh, adding to our sins and our guilt, for our guilt is great, so that his burning anger is against Israel. So the armed men left the captives and the plunder before the commanders and all the assembly. Then the men who were designated by name arose, took hold of the captives, and they clothed all their naked ones from the spoil, And they gave them clothes and sandals, fed them and gave them drink, anointed them with oil, led all their feeble ones on donkeys, and brought them to Jericho, the city of palm trees, to their brothers. Then they returned to Samaria. Hey, Samantha, how are you? We're in 28:16 now. At that time, King Ahaz sent to the kings of Assyria for help. Indeed, again, the Edomites had come and struck Judah and carried away captives. And the Philistines also had raided the cities of the Shephelah and of the Negev of Judah and had captured Beth Shemesh, Aijalon, Gederoth, and Sakah with its towns, Timnah with its towns, and Gimzo with its towns, and they settled there. For Yahweh humbled Judah because of Ahaz, king of Israel, for he had caused it to be out of control in Judah and was very unfaithful to Yahweh. So Tilgath-Pilneser, king of Assyria, came against him and distressed him instead of strengthening him. Although Ahaz took a portion out of the house of Yahweh and out of the house of the king and the princes and gave it to the king of Assyria, it did not help him. Now, in the time of his distress, this same king, Ahaz, became yet more unfaithful to Yahweh. Indeed, he sacrificed to the gods of Damascus, which had struck him, and said, "Because the gods of the kings of Aram helped them, I will sacrifice to them that they may help me." But they became the stumbling of him and all Israel. Ahaz gathered together the utensils of the house of God. Then he cut the utensils of the house of God in pieces, and he closed the doors of the house of Yahweh and made altars for himself in every corner of Jerusalem. Now in each and every city of Judah he made high places to offer offerings and smoke to other gods, and provoked Yahweh, the God of his fathers, to anger. Now the rest of his acts and all his ways, from first to last, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. So Ahaz slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city in Jerusalem, for they did not bring him into the tombs of the kings of Israel. And Hezekiah, his son, became king in his place. Hezekiah became king when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did what was right in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that David his father had done. In the first year of his reign, in the first month, he opened the doors of the house of Yahweh and repaired them. And he brought in the priests and the Levites and gathered them into the square on the east. Then he said to them, "Listen to me, O Levites, set yourselves apart now as holy, and set apart as holy the house of Yahweh, the God of your fathers, and bring out the impurity from the holy place. For our fathers have been unfaithful and have done what is evil in the sight of Yahweh our God, and have forsaken him and turned their faces away from the dwelling place of Yahweh, and have turned their backs. They have also shut the doors of the porch and put out the lamps, and have not burned incense or offered burnt offerings in the holy place to the God of Israel. Therefore the wrath of Yahweh was against Judah and Jerusalem, and he has made them an object of terror, of horror, and of hissing, as you see with your own eyes. And behold, our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons and our daughters and our wives are in captivity for this. Now it is in my heart to cut a covenant with Yahweh, the God of Israel, that his burning anger may turn away from us. My sons, do not be at ease now, for Yahweh has chosen you to stand before him, to minister to him, and to be his ministers, and offer offerings up in smoke." Then the Levites arose, Mahath, the son of Amasai, and Joel, the son of Azariah, from the sons of the Kohathites, and from the sons of Merari, Kish, the son of Abdi, and Azariah, the son of Jehalalel, and from the Gershonites, Joah, the son of Zimmah, and Eden, the son of Joah, and from the sons of Elizaphan, Shimri, and Jeiel, and from the sons of Asaph, Zechariah, and Mattaniah, and from the sons of Heman, Jehiel, and Shimei, and from the sons of Jeduthun, Shemaiah, and Uziel. And they gathered their brothers, set themselves apart as holy, and went in to cleanse the house of Yahweh, according to the commandment of the king by the words of Yahweh. So the priests went into the inner part of the house of Yahweh to cleanse it, and every unclean thing which they found in the temple of Yahweh they brought out to the court of the house of Yahweh. Then the Levites received it to bring out to the Kidron Valley to an outer area. Then they began to set it apart as holy on the first day of the first month, and on the 8th day of the month they entered the porch of Yahweh. Then they set apart the house of Yahweh as holy in 8 days, and completed it on the 16th day of the first month. Then they went in to King Hezekiah and said, "We have cleansed the whole house of Yahweh, the altar of burnt offering with all of its utensils, and the table of showbread with all of its utensils. Moreover, all the utensils which King Ahaz had rejected during his reign in his unfaithfulness, we have prepared and set apart as holy, and behold, they are before the altar of Yahweh." Then King Hezekiah rose early and gathered the princes of the city and went up to the house of Yahweh. And they brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 lambs, and 7 male goats for a sin offering for the kingdom, the sanctuary in Judah. And he ordered the priests, the sons of Aaron, to offer them on the altar of Yahweh. So they slaughtered the bulls, and the priests took the blood and splashed it on the altar. They also slaughtered the rams and splashed the blood on the altar. They slaughtered the lambs also and splashed the blood on the altar. Then they had the male goats of the sin offering approach before the king and the assembly, and they laid their hands on them. And the priests slaughtered them and purged the altar with their blood to atone for all Israel. For the king ordered the burnt offering and the sin offering for all Israel. He then caused the Levites to stand in the house of Yahweh with cymbals, with harps, and with lyres, according to the command of David, and of Gad the king's seer, and of Nathan the prophet, for the command was from Yahweh by the hand his prophets. And the Levites stood with the musical instruments of David, and the priests with the trumpets. Then Hezekiah said to offer the burnt offering on the altar. When the burnt offering began, the song of Yahweh also began with the trumpets, accompanied by the instruments of David, the king of Israel. And while the whole assembly worshiped, the singers also sang, and the trumpets sounded. All this continued until the burnt offering was completed. Now, at the completion of the burnt offering, the king and all who were present with him bowed down and worshipped. Moreover, King Hezekiah and the officials ordered the Levites to sing praises to Yahweh with the words of David and Asaph the seer. So they sang praises with gladness and bowed down and worshipped. And then Hezekiah answered and said, Now that you have become ordained to Yahweh, approach and bring sacrifices and thank offerings to the house of Yahweh. And the assembly brought sacrifices and thanks offerings, and all those who were willing of heart brought burnt offerings. And the number of the burnt offerings which the assembly brought was 70 bulls, 100 rams, and 200 lambs. All these were for a burnt offering to Yahweh. And the holy things were 600 bulls and 3,000 sheep. But the priests were too few, so that they were unable to skin all the burnt offerings. Therefore, their brothers, the Levites, helped them until the work was completed, until the other priests had set them apart as holy. For the Levites were more upright of heart to set themselves apart as holy than the priests. There were also many burnt offerings with the fat of the peace offerings and with the drink offerings for the burnt offerings. Thus the service of the house of Yahweh was established again. Then Hezekiah and all the people were glad over what God had prepared for the people, because the thing came about suddenly. Chapter 30. And Hezekiah sent all Israel and Judah and wrote letters also to Ephraim and Manasseh, that they should come to the house of Yahweh at Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover to Yahweh, the God of Israel. And the king and his princes and all the assembly in Jerusalem had taken counsel to celebrate the Passover in the 2nd month, since they could not celebrate it at that time, because the priests had not set themselves apart as holy in sufficient numbers, nor had the people been gathered to Jerusalem. Thus the thing was right in the eyes of the king and in the eyes of all the assembly. So they established a decree to make a proclamation pass throughout all Israel from Beersheba even to Dan, that they should come to celebrate the Passover to Yahweh, the God of Israel, at Jerusalem. For they had not celebrated it in great numbers, as it was written. And the couriers went throughout all Israel and Judah with the letters from the hand of the king and his princes, even according to the commander of the king, saying, O sons of Israel, return to Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, that he may return to those of you who escaped and remain from the hand of the kings of Assyria. Now, do not be like your fathers and your brothers who were unfaithful to Yahweh, the God of their fathers, so that he made them an object of horror, as you see. Now do not stiffen your neck like your fathers, but give your hand to Yahweh and enter a sanctuary which he has set apart as holy forever, and serve Yahweh your God, that his burning anger may turn away from you. For when you return to Yahweh, your brothers and your sons will find compassion before those who led them captive, and will return to this land. For Yahweh your God is gracious and compassionate, and will not turn his face away from you if you return to him. So the couriers passed from city to city throughout the country of Ephraim and Manasseh, and as far as Zebulun, but they were laughing at them to scorn and mocking them. Nevertheless, some men of Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. The hand of God was also on Judah to give them one heart to do what the king and the princes commanded by the word of Yahweh. Now many people were gathered at Jerusalem to celebrate the feast of unleavened bread in the 2nd month, a very large assembly. And they arose and took away the altars which were in Jerusalem. They also took away all the incense altars and cast them into the brook Kidron. Then they slaughtered the Passover lambs on the 14th of the 2nd month. And the priests and Levites were ashamed of themselves and set themselves apart as holy and brought burnt offerings to the house of Yahweh. And they stood at their stations according to the legal judgment for them. According to the law of Moses, the man of God, the priests splashed the blood which they received from the hand of the Levites. For there were many in the assembly who had not set themselves apart as holy. Therefore, the Levites were over the slaughter of the Passover lambs for everyone who was unclean, in order to set them apart as holy to Yahweh. For a multitude of the people, even many from Ephraim and Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun, had not cleansed themselves, yet they ate the Passover otherwise than what was written. For Hezekiah prayed for them, saying, May Yahweh, who is good, atone for everyone who prepares his heart to seek God, Yahweh, the God of his fathers, though not according to the rules of cleansing of the sanctuary. So Yahweh heard Hezekiah and healed the people. And the sons of Israel present in Jerusalem celebrated the Feast of Unleavened Bread for 7 days with great gladness, and the Levites and the priests praised Yahweh day after day with loud instruments to Yahweh. Then Hezekiah spoke to the hearts of the Levites, of all the Levites who showed good insight in the things of Yahweh. So they ate for the appointed 7 days, sacrificing peace offerings and giving thanks to Yahweh, the God of their fathers. Then the whole assembly took counsel to determine to celebrate the feast another 7 days. So they celebrated the 7 days with gladness. For Hezekiah, king of Judah, had contributed to the assembly 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep, and the princes had contributed to the assembly 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep, and a large number of priests set themselves apart as holy. And all the assembly of Judah were glad with the priests and the Levites and all the assembly that came from Israel, both the sojourners who came from the land of Israel and those living in Judah. So there was great gladness in Jerusalem, because there was nothing like this in Jerusalem since the days of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. Then the Levitical priests arose and blessed the people, and their voice was heard, and their prayer came to his holy habitation to heaven. Chapter 31. Now, when all this was completed, all Israel who were present went out to the cities of Judah, shattered the pillars, cut the Asherim in pieces, and tore down the high places and the altars throughout all Judah and Benjamin, as well as in Ephraim and Manasseh, until the destruction was completed. Then all the sons of Israel returned to their cities, each to his possession. And Hezekiah set up the divisions of the priests and the Levites by their divisions, each according to his service, both the priests and the Levites for burnt offerings and for peace offerings, to minister and to give thanks and to praise in the gates of the camp of Yahweh. He also appointed the king's portion of his goods for the burnt offerings, namely for the morning and evening burnt offerings, and the burnt offerings for the Sabbath, and for the new moons, and for the appointed times, as it is written in the land of Yahweh, or the law of Yahweh, rather. Also he said to the people who lived in Jerusalem to give the portion due to the priests and the Levites, that they might be strong in the law of Yahweh. As soon as his word spread forth, the sons of Israel provided in abundance the first fruits of grain, new wine, oil, honey, and all of the produce of the field, and they brought in abundantly the tithe of all. Now the sons of Israel and Judah, who lived in the cities of Judah, also brought in the tithe of oxen and sheep, and the tithe of the holy gifts, which were made holy to Yahweh their God, and put them in heaps. In the 3rd month they began to make the heaps, and completed them by the 7th month. Then Hezekiah and the rulers came and saw the heaps, and they blessed Yahweh and his people Israel. Then Hezekiah inquired of the priests and the Levites concerning the heaps. And Azariah, the chief priest of the house of Zadok, said to him, Since the contributions began to be brought into the house of Yahweh, there has been much to eat and be satisfied with and have left over. For Yahweh has blessed his people, and this great quantity is left over. Then Hezekiah ordered them to prepare rooms in the house of Yahweh, and they prepared them. And they faithfully brought in the contribution and the tithe and the holy things. And Conaniah, the Levite, was the officer over them, and his brother Shimei was second. Now Jehiel, Azaziah, Nahath, Asahel, Jeremoth, Jozabad, Eliel, Ismachiah, Mahath, and Benaiah were overseers, assisting at the hand of Conaniah and Shimei, his brother, by the appointment of King Hezekiah. And Azariah was the chief officer over the house of God. And Kor, the son of Imnah, the Levite, the keeper of the eastern gate, was over the freewill offerings of God, to distribute the contributions for Yahweh and the most holy things. Now assisting by his hand was Eden, Miniamin, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, Shechaniah, in the cities of the priests to distribute faithfully their portions to their brothers by divisions, whether great or small, without regard to their genealogical record. To the males from 30 years old and upward, everyone who entered the house of Yahweh for his daily obligations, for their service and their responsibilities according to their divisions, as well as the priests who were recorded genealogically according to their fathers' households, and the Levites from 20 years old and upwards by their responsibilities in their divisions. The genealogical record included all their little ones, their wives, their sons, and their daughters, for the whole assembly, for they set themselves apart faithfully in holiness. Also for the sons of Aaron the priest, who were in the pasture lands of their cities, or in each and every city, there were men who were designated by name to distribute portions to every male among the priests, and everyone genealogically recorded among the Levites. Thus Hezekiah did throughout all Judah, and he did what was good, right, and true before Yahweh his God. And every work which he began in the service of the house of God, in law and in commandment, to seek his God, he did with all his heart and succeeded. Chapter 32. After these acts of faithfulness, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and invaded Judah and encamped against the fortified cities and thought to break into them for himself. Then Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib had come and that he had set his face to make war on Jerusalem. And he took counsel with his commanders and his warriors to stop up the supply of water from the springs which were outside the city. And they helped him. So many people gathered and stopped up all the springs and the stream which flowed in the midst of the land, saying, "Why should the kings of Assyria come and find abundant water?" And he strengthened himself and rebuilt all the wall that had been broken down and erected towers on it, and built another outside wall and strengthened the Millo in the city of David, and made weapons and shields in great number. He also put military commanders over the people and gathered them to him in the square at the city gate, and spoke to their hearts, saying, "Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be dismayed because of the king of Assyria, nor because of the multitude that is with him. For the one with us is greater than the one with him. With him is only an arm of flesh, but with us is Yahweh our God to help us and to fight our battles." And the people were sustained by the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah. After this, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, sent his servants to Jerusalem while he was besieging Lachish with all his forces with him against Hezekiah, king of Judah, and against all Judah who were at Jerusalem, saying, "Thus says Sennacherib, king of Assyria, on what are you trusting, that you are remaining in Jerusalem under siege? Is not Hezekiah inciting you to give yourselves over to die by hunger and by thirst, saying, Yahweh our God will deliver us from the hand of the king of Assyria? Has not the same Hezekiah taken away his high places and his altars, and said to Judah and Jerusalem, You shall worship before one altar, and on it you shall offer offerings up in smoke? Do you not know what I and my fathers have done to all the peoples of the lands? Were the gods of the nations of the lands able to at all to deliver their land from my hand? Who was there among all the gods of these nations which my fathers devoted to destruction, who could deliver his people from my hand, that your God should be able to deliver you from my hand? So now do not let Hezekiah deceive you or incite you like this, and do not believe him, for no God of any nation or kingdom was able to deliver his people from my hand or from the hand of my fathers. How much less will your God deliver you from my hand?" His servant spoke further against Yahweh God and against his servant Hezekiah. He also wrote letters to reproach Yahweh, the God of Israel, and to speak against him, saying, As the gods of the nations of the lands have not delivered their people from my hand, so the God of Hezekiah will not deliver his people from my hand. And they called this out with a loud voice in the language of Judah to the people of Jerusalem who were on the wall, to instill fear and terrify them so that they might capture the city. And they spoke of the God of Jerusalem as of the gods of the peoples of the earth, the work of men's hands. But King Hezekiah and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, prayed about this and cried out to heaven. And Yahweh sent an angel who wiped out every mighty man of valor, ruler, and commander in the camp of the king of Assyria. So he returned in shame to his own land, and he entered the house of his God, and some of his own children caused him to fall there by the sword. So Yahweh saved Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, and from the hand of all others, and he guided them on every side. And many were bringing presents to Yahweh at Jerusalem, and precious things to Hezekiah, king of Judah, so that he was lifted up in the sight of all nations thereafter. In those days, Hezekiah became sick to the point of death, and he prayed to Yahweh, and Yahweh spoke to him and gave him a miraculous sign. But Hezekiah gave no return for the benefit he received, because his heart was proud. And therefore wrath came on him and Judah, and on Judah and Jerusalem. However, Hezekiah humbled the pride of his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of Yahweh did not come on them in the days of Hezekiah. Now Hezekiah had abundant riches and honor, and he made for himself treasuries for silver, gold, precious stones, spices, shields, and all kinds of desirable articles. Storehouses also for the produce of grain, wine, and oil, stalls for all kinds of cattle, and sheepfolds for the flocks. He also made cities for himself and acquired flocks and herds in abundance, for God had given him exceedingly abundant wealth. And it was Hezekiah who stopped the upper outlet of the waters of Gihon and directed them to the west side of the city of David. And Hezekiah succeeded in all that he did, even in the matter of the envoys of the rulers of Babylon, who sent to him to inquire of the miraculous sign that had happened in the land. God left him alone only to test him, that he might know all that was in his heart. Now, the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and his deeds of loving kindness, behold, they are written in the vision of Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. So Hezekiah slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the upper section of the tombs of the sons of David. And all Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem honored him at his death. And Manasseh his son became king in his place. Let's see. Chapter 33. Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh, according to the abominations of the nations whom Yahweh dispossessed before the sons of Israel. Indeed, he rebuilt the high places with Hezekiah his father, which Hezekiah his father had torn down. And he erected altars for the Baals, and made Asherim, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. And he built altars in the house of Yahweh, of which Yahweh had said, in Jerusalem my name shall be forever. Indeed, he built altars for all the hosts of heaven in the two courts of the house of Yahweh. He even made his sons pass through the fire of the valley of Ben-Hinnom, and he practiced soothsaying, interpreting omens, practiced sorcery, and dealt with mediums and spiritists. He did much that was evil in the sight of Yahweh, provoking him to anger. Then he put the graven image of the idol which he had made in the house of God, of which God had said to David and to Solomon his son, in this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen from all the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever. And I will not again remove the foot of Israel from the land which I have set up for your fathers, if only they will be careful to do all that I have commanded them, according to all the law, the statutes, and the judgments given by the hand of Moses. Thus Manasseh led Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem astray, in order to do more evil than the nations whom Yahweh destroyed before the sons of Israel. Then Yahweh spoke to Manasseh and his people, but they paid no attention. Therefore Yahweh brought the commanders of the army of the king of Assyria against them, and they captured Manasseh with hooks, bound him with bronze chains, and took him to Babylon. And when he was in distress, he entreated Yahweh as God, and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers. Then he prayed to them, and he was moved by his entreaty, and heard his supplication, and returned him back to Jerusalem to his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that Yahweh was a God. Afterwards, he built the outer wall of the city of David on the west side of Gihon in the valley, even to the entrance of the fish gate. And he encircled the Ophel with it, and made it very high. Then he put military commanders in all the fortified cities of Judah. He also removed the foreign gods and the idol from the house of Yahweh, as well as all the altars which he had built on the mountain of the house of Yahweh and in Jerusalem, and he threw them outside the city. And he set up the altar of Yahweh and sacrificed peace offerings and thank offerings on it. And he said for Judah to serve Yahweh, the God of Israel. Nevertheless, the people still sacrificed in the high places, although only to Yahweh their God. Now the rest of the acts of Manasseh, even his prayer to his God, and the words of the seers who spoke to him in the name of Yahweh, the God of Israel, behold, they are among the chronicles of the kings of Israel. His prayer also, and how God was entreated by him, and all his sin, his unfaithfulness, and the sites on which he built high places and erected himself, behold, they are written in the chronicles of the Hosea. And Manasseh slept with his fathers, and they buried him in his own house. And Amon his son became king in his place. Amon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh, as Manasseh his father had done. And Amon sacrificed to all the graven images which his father Manasseh had made, and he served them. Moreover, he did not humble himself before Yahweh as his father Manasseh had humbled himself. But Amon multiplied guilt. Then his servants conspired against him and put him to death. in his own house. Then the people of the land struck down all those who had conspired against King Ammon, and the people of the land made Josiah, his son, king in his place. Chapter 34. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And he did what was right in the sight of Yahweh, and walked in the ways of his father David, and did not turn aside to the right or to the left. Now in the 8th year of his reign, while he was still a youth, he began to seek the God of his father David. And in the 12th year, he began to cleanse Judah and Jerusalem of the high places, the Asherim, the graven images, and the molten images. And they tore down the altars of the Baals in his presence, and the incense altars that were high above them he cut in pieces. Also the Asherim, the graven images, and the molten images he broke in pieces, and ground to powder, and scattered it on the graves of those who had sacrificed to them. Then he burned the bones of the priests on their altars, and cleansed Judah and Jerusalem. And in the cities of Manasseh, Ephraim, Simeon, even as far as Naphtali and their surrounding ruins, he also tore down the altars and beat the Asherim and the graven images into powder, and cut in pieces all the incense altars throughout the land of Israel. Then he returned to Jerusalem. Now in the 18th year of his reign, when he had cleansed the land and the house, he sent Shaphan the son of Azaliah, and Maaseiah, an official of the city, and Joah the son of Joahaz, the recorder, to repair the house of Yahweh his God. And they came to Hilkiah the high priest, and gave him the money that was brought into the house of God, which the Levites, the doorkeepers, had gathered from the hand of Manasseh and Ephraim, and from all the remnant of Israel, and from all Judah and Benjamin and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Then they gave it into the hand of those who did the work, who had the oversight of the house of Yahweh. And those who did the work, who were doing this in the house of Yahweh, used it to restore and repair the house. Then, in turn, gave it to the craftsmen and to the builders to buy hewn stone and timber for clamps, and to make beams for the houses which the kings of Judah had let go to ruin. And the men did the work faithfully with foremen over them to direct Jahath and Obadiah, the Levites of the sons of Merari, Zechariah and Meshullam of the sons of the Kohathites, and the Levites, all who were skilled with musical instruments. They were also over those who carried loads, and directed all those who did the work from service to service. And some of the Levites were scribes and officials and gatekeepers. When they were taking out the money which had been brought into the house of Yahweh, Hilkiah the priest found the book of the law of Yahweh given by the hand of Moses. So Hilkiah answered and said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of Yahweh. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan. Then Shaphan brought the book to the king, and furthermore responded to the king with a word, saying, everything that was given to the hand of your servants they are doing. They have also poured out the money that was found in the house of Yahweh, and have given it into the hand of the supervisors and those who did the work. Moreover, Shaphan the scribe told the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest gave me a book. And Shaphan read from it in the presence of the king. Now it happened that when the king heard the words of the law, he tore his clothes. Then the king commanded Hilkiah, Ahikam the son of Shaphan, Abdon the son of Micah, Shaphan the scribe, and Azariah the king's servant, saying, Go inquire of Yahweh for me and those who are left in Israel and in Judah, concerning the words of the book which has been found. For great is the wrath of Yahweh which is poured out against us, because our fathers have not kept the word of Yahweh, to do according to all that is written in this book. So Hilkiah and those whom the king had told went to Huldah, the prophetess, the wife of Shallum, the son of Tokath, the son of Hazrah, a keeper of the wardrobe. Now she lived in Jerusalem in the second quarter, and they spoke to her regarding this. And she said to them, Thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, say to the man who sent you to me, Thus says Yahweh, behold, I am bringing evil on this place and on its inhabitants, even all the curses written in the book which they have read in the presence of the king of Judah. Because they have forsaken me and have burned incense to other gods, that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath will be poured out against this place, and it shall not be quenched. But the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of Yahweh, thus you shall say to him, Thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, regarding the words which you have heard, because your heart was soft, and you humbled yourself before God when you heard his words against this place and against its inhabitants. And because you humbled yourself before me, tore your clothes, and wept before me, I truly have heard you, declares Yahweh. Behold, I will gather you to your fathers, and you will be gathered to your grave in peace. So your eyes will not see all the evil which I will bring on this place and on its inhabitants. So they brought back word to the king. Then the king sent and gathered all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem, and the king went up to the house of Yahweh, and all the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the priests and the Levites and all the people, from the greatest to the least, and he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant which was found in the house of Yahweh. Then the king stood in his place and cut a covenant before Yahweh to walk after Yahweh, and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all his heart and with all his soul, to do the words of the covenant that were written in this book. Moreover, he made all who were present in Jerusalem and Benjamin to stand with him. So the inhabitants of Jerusalem did according to the covenant of God, the God of their fathers. And Josiah took away all the abominations from all the lands belonging to the sons of Israel, and made all who were present in Israel to serve Yahweh their God throughout his lifetime. Throughout his lifetime, they did not turn away from following Yahweh, the God of their fathers. Chapter 35. Then Josiah celebrated the Passover to Yahweh in Jerusalem, and they slaughtered the Passover animals on the 14th day of the first month. And he caused the priests to stand in their responsibilities and strengthen them in the service of the house of Yahweh. He also said to the Levites, who provided understanding to all Israel and who were holy to Yahweh, put the holy ark in the house which Solomon the son of David, king of Israel, built. It will be a burden on your shoulders no longer. Now serve Yahweh your God and his people Israel. So prepare yourselves by your fathers' households and your divisions, according to the writing of David, king of Israel, and according to the writing of his son Solomon. Moreover, stand in the holy place according to the sections of the fathers' households of your brothers, the lay people, and according to the Levites, by division of a father's household. Now slaughter the Passover animals. Sanctify yourselves and prepare for your brothers to do according to the word of Yahweh by the hand of Moses. And Josiah contributed to the lay people, to all who were present, flocks and lambs and young goats, all for the Passover offerings, numbering 30,000 plus 3,000 bulls. These were from the king's possessions. His officials also contributed a freewill offering to the people, the priests and the Levites. Hilkiah and Zechariah and Jehiel, the officers of the house of God, gave to the priests for the Passover offering 2,600 from the flocks and 300 bulls. Conaniah also, and Shemaiah and Nethanel, his brothers, and Hashabiah and Jael and Jozabad, the officials of the Levites, contributed to the Levites for the Passover offerings, 5,000 from the flocks and 500 bulls. So the service was prepared, and the priests stood at their stations, and the Levites by their divisions, according to the king's commandment. And they slaughtered the Passover animals, and while the priests splashed the blood received from their hand, the Levites skinned them. Then they took away the portions of the burnt offerings, and that they might give them to the section of the fathers' households of the lay people to bring near to Yahweh, as it is written in the book of Moses. They did this also with the bulls. So they roasted the Passover animals on the fire according to the legal judgment, and they boiled the holy things in pots, in kettles and pans, and carried them speedily to all the lay people. Afterwards, they prepared for themselves and for the priests, because the priests, the sons of Aaron, were offering the burnt offerings and the fat until night. Therefore, the Levites prepared for themselves and for the priests, the sons of Aaron. The singers, the sons of Asaph, were also at their stations, according to the commandment of David, Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun, the king's seer. And the gatekeepers at each gate did not have to turn aside from their service, because the Levites, their brothers, prepared for them. So all the service of Yahweh was prepared on that day to celebrate the Passover, and to offer burnt offerings on the altar of Yahweh according to the commandment of King Josiah. Thus the sons of Israel who were present celebrated the Passover at that time, and the feast of unleavened bread 7 days. And there had not been celebrated a Passover like it in Israel from the days of Samuel the prophet, nor had any of the kings of Israel celebrated such a Passover as Josiah celebrated with the priests, the Levites, all Judah and Israel who were present, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of Josiah's reign, the Passover was celebrated. After all this, when Josiah had set the house in order, Necho, king of Egypt, went up to make war on Carchemish on the Euphrates, and Josiah went out to meet him. But Necho sent messengers to him, saying, "What have I to do with you, O king of Judah? I am not coming against you today, but against the house with which I am at war. And God has said for me to hurry. Stop for your own sake from interfering with God who is with me, so that he will not bring you to ruin." However, Josiah would not turn away from him, but disguised himself in order to make war with him. Nor did he listen to the words of Necho from the mouth of God, but came to make war on the plain of Megiddo. Then the archers shot King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, "Take me away, for I am badly wounded." So his servants took him out of the chariot and drove him in the second chariot which he had, and brought him to Jerusalem, where he died. And he was buried in the tombs of his fathers. And all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. Then Jeremiah chanted a lament for Josiah. And all the male and female singers speak about Josiah in their lamentations to this day. And they made them a statute in Israel. Behold, they are also written in the lamentations. Now the rest of the acts of Josiah and his deeds of loving kindness, according to what was written in the law of Yahweh, and his acts, first to last, behold, they are written in the book of the king of Israel and Judah. Chapter 36. Then the people of the land took Joahaz, the son of Josiah, and made him king in place of his father in Jerusalem. Joahaz was 23 years old when he became king, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. Then the king of Egypt had him removed in Jerusalem and imposed on the land a fine of 100 talents of silver and 1 talent of gold. Then the king of Egypt made Eliakim, his brother, king over Judah and Jerusalem, and changed his name to Jehoiakim. But Necho took Joahaz, his brother, and brought him to Egypt. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh his God. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against him and bound him with bronze chains to lead him off to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also brought some of the articles of the house of Yahweh to Babylon and put them in his temple at Babylon. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and the abominations which he did, and what was found against him, behold, they are written in the books of the kings of Israel and Judah. And Jehoiachin, his son, became king in his place. Jehoiachin was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned 3 months and 10 days in Jerusalem, and he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh. And at the turn of the year, King Nebuchadnezzar sent and brought him to Babylon with the valuable articles of the house of Yahweh, and he made his relative Zedekiah king over Judah and Jerusalem. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh his God. He did not humble himself before Jeremiah the prophet, who spoke from the mouth of Yahweh. He also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear allegiance by God. But he stiffened his neck and hardened his heart against turning to Yahweh, the God of Israel. Furthermore, all the leaders of the priests and the people were very unfaithful, following all the abominations of the nations, and they defiled the house of Yahweh, which he had set apart as holy in Jerusalem. And Yahweh, the God of their fathers, sent word to them again and again by the hand of his messengers, because he had compassion on his people and on his habitation. But they continually mocked the messengers of God, despised his words, and scoffed at his prophets, until the wrath of Yahweh arose against his people, until there was no remedy. Therefore he brought up against them the king of the Chaldeans, who killed their choice men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion on choice man or virgin, old man or infirm. He gave them all into his hand, and all the articles of the house of God, great and small, and the treasures of the house of Yahweh, and the treasures of the king and his officials, he brought them all to Babylon. Then they burned the house of God and tore down the wall of Jerusalem and burned all its palaces with fire and destroyed all its valuable articles. And those who had escaped from the sword he took away into exile to Babylon, and they were slaves to him and to his sons, until the rule of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of Yahweh by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had made up for its Sabbaths. All the days of its desolation, it kept Sabbath until 70 years were fulfilled. Now, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, in order to complete the word of Yahweh by the mouth of Jeremiah, Yahweh stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he had a proclamation pass through his kingdom, and also put it in writing, saying, "Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, Yahweh, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Whoever there is among you of all his people, may Yahweh his God be with him, and let him go up." I think we'll stop there. We'll stop there today. Let's see, 20, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. 9 chapters today. So good day of reading. Lord willing, we will pick up tomorrow morning at our regular time in Ezra chapter 1. Ezra chapter 1. We're moving. I hope you all have a blessed day in the Lord, everybody. Love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow morning for another edition of Bible Reading Fellowship. Bye-bye. Hey, wait, 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 wait.